This podcast is brought to you by Startup Socials, a global community of entrepreneurs built to connect and empower people in the startup ecosystem.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have Dean Levitt, and I would love to turn the floor to you, Dean, and you're right now full screen, to introduce yourself. And let's just start from the outset. What do you think makes you super awesome? Or what do you think? Let me rephrase. What do you think people think makes you super awesome?
Sure. So much for having me on. It's very cool to be here. And yeah, so a little bit about me. My name is Dean, and I'm the Chief of Culture of Mad Mimi, which is an email newsletter platform. And what a Chief of Culture is, it's sort of a role that developed. Initially, I was one of the owners, founders, whatever you want to call it. And I dealt with everything customer-facing, the marketing, the customer support, the strategy of growing our business one person by one person by one person. And way back, we were trying to figure out what title was right. It wasn't quite COO. It wasn't quite head of customer support. It wasn't quite marketing. So we said Chief of Culture because the vibe, if you will, was really driven by me. And then we were acquired by GoDaddy roughly this time last year. And at that point, Mad Mimi had about 250,000 customers, send about 40 million emails a day. So it grew very nicely from just my brother and I, just two people, to quite a nice sized little business. And also currently I'm the director of online support for GoDaddy email marketing. And we've built an amazing email platform for GoDaddy as well. And I'm very involved in that. So that's roughly where I'm at. And it's kind of funny you ask, so what makes you awesome? Because as a foreigner, and having lived previously in the United States, I'm South African, by the way, currently living in Tel Aviv, Israel. So when you apply for a visa, I actually was a musician way back when. And to get an artist's visa, the interviewer at the embassy in South Africa would say, so what makes you so special that we should give you a visa? And I'm actually very used to answering that question. That's a question I've heard every year for about 15 years is, so what makes you awesome? And they sit there with their stamp, and although most of them were fairly nice, so it's okay.
I'll try to be fairly nice.
Cool. You can be on. So really what makes Mad Mimi special and my role in it is our philosophy as to how we look at our customers. And I think that drives absolutely everything else. It drives how we design the product, and it drives how we interact with our customers and how we make our next decisions in our strategy. And it all comes from this, is that we understand that on the other end of the email conversation or our live chat, we very seldom do phone support, but on the other end is a human being who is trying to grow their business. So when we at Mad Mimi can help someone grow their business, even if it's just by $10 more, that's $10 more that goes to food on the table for someone, or their kids' college fund, or a spa day for someone, or a trip, and it's important and it matters to them. So once you have that perspective that person on the other end is not a customer because they're going to give you money. They're a customer because you're going to be able to have a relationship with them and help their business grow. And once you have that locked in your mind, it turns out that you tend to have a really awesome day. Both sides tend to have an awesome day because everyone on my team is able to just love their job because they know that they're doing good things. And everyone on the other side tends to appreciate that perspective. And so out of thousands of customer interactions, almost all of them, I'd say 99.9% of them are really positive and wonderful.
Great answer that I think answered some questions that I was only going to ask, but but I do have another hopefully good one for you. As a fellow entrepreneur and as an investor, I've seen companies go through different stages, and I have been also part of companies that were starting, that got funded, that were sold. Definitely, and you're the guy who is in charge of culture, so you're the guy sort of mostly responsible for that. How does the culture specifically change from you and just a few co-founders to you and a few co-founders and some employees to you being part of a pretty huge organization and sending tens of millions of newsletters?
It's a really good question. So certainly in the early days, the culture was actually quite easy to maintain as we added 1 or 2 or 3 employees, mostly because we actually hired from our customers. And it's kind of funny, our first employee, actually, no, she was our second employee. She was a customer who wrote in to say, hey, I noticed that it's just the 2 of you, because we were very open that we weren't a big company. It was just my brother and I. And she said, do you need someone to help out on the weekends? And she already knew the product, so yes. And then one of the other things is we hired from people who were who had similar lives to us, who were musicians or actors, and kind of like the service industry. We had also worked in many restaurants as musicians as well. So we ended up working with people who were customers or people who were used to dealing with people a lot, and it just resulted in a really strong synergy, if you will. And sorry to use jargon, but synergy is a good word there. So then we actually realized, as we started growing beyond our friends and customers where we needed to hire from posting a job somewhere online, that training mattered. And so our training process is about 100 hours and then 3 months of on-the-job training. So it's a lot of investment in training. And I won't get into the finer details of the training process, but it's quite tough, and it's focused more on the cultural aspect and the vibe than it is on the technical aspects, because Mad Mimi is supposed to be fairly simple, so most people get it pretty quickly. It's the atmosphere and the way to interact with people that we really focus on for that length of time. And then as we grew, the culture stayed fairly solid. We kept a flat hierarchy. Then when GoDaddy acquired us, they were very sensitive to retaining our culture, and they've done absolutely nothing to try and change it. There was a little bit of a learning period where their HR department kind of did a lot of bending over backwards for us. They were really sweet, and they worked really hard to make sure that we didn't have to change our processes. So even today, we're actually functioning fairly autonomously, and we're I don't feel our culture has changed. In fact, I think it's actually been a really good opportunity for me to give responsibility to other people in the team to go and disseminate the same culture and the same vibe the way that they've seen it. So I'm not necessarily the only guy saying, okay, here's how we think about things. Now I have a slightly larger team of people saying, here's how we think about things. So I would say the culture's been fairly it's consistent. The vibe's been consistent.
Got it. Still on that same question, since we are talking about culture, you as a person lived in very, very different places, very, very different countries. Can you? Yeah, I mean, I did too. So that's especially interesting to me. Can you talk a little bit about what makes you lived in several, so pick and choose whichever. What makes any place special? What are some really maybe weird or super awesome or very unusual to you things, say, in Tel Aviv or elsewhere in America, in South Africa, etc.?
Sure, that's a fun question to answer. So I went from South Africa at about 18 years old, to Boston, then to New York, then to Minnesota, then to New York, then to Hawaii, and now in Israel. So I have jumped around a lot. And your question kind of just nails the actual perspectives. Each place added a vibe. New York, everyone hustles. And so getting Mad Mimi launched off the ground, New York's the right place to be. And a place like Tel Aviv also kind of inspires that. Tel Aviv has more startups than anywhere else in the world, except for Silicon Valley. So these places have this energy that says, so you don't want to work another hour today. Someone else is working that longer hour and they're going to beat you. Go work hard. But as soon as Mad Mimi was really rolling, like I'm talking 10 customers, not 100 customers. I had moved to Minnesota because we were struggling. It was cheaper there. You know, $300 a month rent when you're a startup is really great. So in Minneapolis, where things were cheaper, you know, with a long winter, you can focus more, right? There was less pressure on hustling, and now more pressure on, or more ability to just focus on building the foundation of the building. I didn't go to meetups. I didn't go to events. We both, Gary and I, we just put our heads down and sort of slugged through that long winter, if you will, until we started just getting a little bit more traction. And that made a big difference. I didn't like New York, and I actually felt it was negatively impacting my work. I had fallen in love with a little bit more of a peaceful existence that New York doesn't really offer. And I found the work in New York to be stressful at that point. So Mad Mimi was growing, but I realized I was staying locked in my home and just working instead of going out and experiencing New York. And I realized it wasn't for me, so I went to Hawaii, and I've never been more productive. Hawaii is an amazing place to live, obviously, although everyone tends to think about it as a, you know, as a holiday destination. But in terms of working, Hawaii has an amazing work-life balance, and that's important once you have a company that's rolling. You know, when you're not hustling for your first few customers, where you're not struggling about getting traction, being in a place where you have that work-life balance really lends to starting to run a business with maturity. So I was able to let the big things not stress me out more. Back in Tel Aviv, it was actually interesting. It was partially because of the acquisition that I decided to move here, is because I felt like I needed to be in a high energy place again. And yeah, so you're absolutely spot on. Where you live has a huge impact on where you on the way you run your business and the way you interact with people. So I miss Hawaii a lot, but being in Tel Aviv is exciting. There's a lot of energy here, and everyone is just focused on being successful, which is a very healthy attitude to surround yourself with.
I think that's an absolutely awesome answer, mostly because out of our thousands and thousands of viewers, I would say, well, if not half, then pretty close to half are international people from all over the world, including probably pretty much all the places you mentioned.
Cool.
And yeah, it would be really interesting to hear their feedback. Talking of startups, since you're one of those, and I really mean it, one of those heroes, people who started something, who was struggling, because every little startup struggles, at least for a little while. I mean, Facebook struggled, Google struggled, ICQ struggled, everybody struggled at some point. What are the very important sort of key points in this road from the very beginning, when you guys say, cool, it would be great to create this very user-friendly service that helps you, takes care of all the sending, mailing, all the statistics, knowing your users, blah, 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 to probably, and I don't want to answer for you, to the next point when you get, like you said, you know, the first 10 customers, the first, I don't know, $1,000 paid, etc. What to you were those really, really key points in your travel from struggle to hopefully a big champagne moment?
You know, it reminds me, we've never actually celebrated the fact that we ended up getting acquired. No, we just kept working. So there hasn't been champagne. on the night we were acquired, I was in a hotel here in Tel Aviv, having recently moved here, and I think I just stepped out for a quiet beer alone and then went back to work. So,
this is the worst. Sorry to interrupt you, but this is like the worst ever story of celebration.
No, there was no big celebration. You know, there was stuff to do. There was a lot of customers who wanted to know about the acquisition. I had to be there to answer them. So, no, in terms of the key milestones, so before we launched Mad Mimi, Gary and I had a music production company that was failing. I mean, bombing. Like we had day jobs to support our day jobs. So when the key milestone of Mad Mimi's birth really comes from Gary having an idea for musicians to reach out to booking agents or to music supervisors for TV. And so the key milestone there was the idea, and he hustled and he got some initial investment, but we actually burned through, it was like 100K. We burned through that money before anything even happened. And the thing is, at the time, we were using Constant Contact to send newsletters about our band and our production company. And Gary just really, really hated working with that. But while building the system to develop the interactions with music supervisors, when we ran out of money, we kind of had this really simple email platform that was basic and it met Gary's design aesthetic feelings about what was simple and yet usable without the clutter and noise of kitchen sink style feature selections. And so that key milestone was when it was like a semi-pivot, right? It's like, okay, this is what we have. This is what we got. And wow, I can actually use this to compete with that industry that I didn't even realize we were going to compete with. And there you go. So that was when the email newsletter platform was born. Then the next key milestone was when we actually got our first, not request, what would the word be? Invitation to accept venture capital. It was fairly early on. A VC had actually acquired a competitor of ours, but they weren't doing so great. And so they wanted to use our composer in the competitor. And that offered a significant amount of money, and certainly very significant for us at that time. But we said no, because we would rather have struggled than change the character of what we were trying to accomplish. And I think once we realized that we could say no and be okay with $200 a week income, rather than take this multi-million-dollar injection, we realized like that's fine. We're going to build this like someone builds a hardware store, one customer at a time, neighborhood by neighborhood, place by place. And we realized, okay, we're not looking for viral growth. We're looking for organic, relaxed growth for a sustainable long-term business. And that's a key moment because it changes your whole perspective of how you move forward with your strategy. It's not let's put money into marketing, it's let's put money into people. And then I'd say our next key milestones were when we had issues, right? When a patent troll tried to sue us, or when we got our first major DDoS attack. These things, it's like going through the fire. What do you do? Because we have no experience in dealing with a patent troll. And luckily, there's a lot of people who are angry at the patent trolls, and we got to chat to a lot of attorneys pro bono, because again, we needed it at those times that were very helpful. And eventually the troll just sort of drifted off, I believe. Although again, the fact that legislation was being passed helped there. But again, it's one of those moments where it's not a key milestone of external issues. It's a key milestone as you realize, okay, we have this fortitude to stay true to what we want, not what someone else wants, or not what the scene might want. So the scene says raise VC, that means you're successful. We said we're successful when we're profitable. Being profitable equals success, not raising funding. Fighting against a patent troll, not giving in to the extortion of a DDoS attack that demanded money, rather let's go down. Let's rather suffer through this than give up our principles. And those are the key milestones that really mattered the most to us, I think. And honestly, they felt like they mattered more than these other moments where it's like, wow, we finally hit 10 million 10 million emails a day, or when we hit 20 million emails a day. Those milestones felt just part of a process. It's these key things where you had to make these big, difficult decisions. Those were the ones that really felt like the milestones.
And they sound like lots of fun too right now, looking back. I'm sure that back then they didn't sound that fun.
No, they weren't so fun, but I'll be honest, some of them, it was fun to just tackle, because you talk to other businesses, and sometimes other businesses are more, they keep things closer to themselves and are less transparent than we've been. And you realize suddenly, like, we put up a blog post about this DDoS attack, and suddenly we got invited to a group of about 30 or 40 other similar businesses, competitors, non-competitors, all who had been hit by the same guy. They just recognized the tactic, and suddenly you feel like, wow, we have this community of people all going through the same thing. So it was pretty cool. And you kind of feel like, wow, we've made it, right? We're a legitimate company. We're over the startup because we're with a community of other businesses, all who have been extorted or tried to be extorted from. So
it sounds really great. Seriously, you're like startupper. The startuppers usually hear different stories, and this is just, I think, what we all need to hear.
Cool.
Question then to you is, can you talk about some big fails or some big screw ups or some really, really regrettable things, some major, not just points of success, but some major points of failure, and things you regret? Or don't regret.
No, that's I was going to say the don't regret. No, we certainly had some failures. One of our hardest things was we had trouble with servers for a long time, and it took us a long time to take the step of changing that aspect of the business. We'd had a long-term commitment with this company. We were very tied into them. And we waited too long to move away. Part of it was it would have needed some investment. Part of it was just hesitation. And I think that probably was a big regret, because it put a lot of strain on my team to deal with the unreliability of those servers, and it put a lot of pressure on our customers as well. It didn't last too long, but that certainly was something in the future I would know to handle with a little bit more decisiveness. As for other big failures, I think with Mad Mimi, because we've had such a gentle growth, that there hasn't been any catastrophic things. I mean, we've certainly had catastrophic days where, like, pow, we're down for 2 days, and this was in the earlier days. But that's not a failure on anyone's part, because if there was a fire at the server, at the building that hosted the servers in Atlanta, that's out of everyone's control. I think the fact that we had failed before starting Mad Mimi with our production company, and we've always been slightly entrepreneurial, my brother and I, or somewhat entrepreneurial, my brother and I. So I can't point to a big failure where I say, gosh, I wish I handled that differently with Mad Mimi per se. I think previously we had gotten a lot of failures out of our system. But the one thing that I eventually learned is not to be angry about anything. And that's something Gary, my brother, who's Mad Mimi's CEO, he was very good at keeping that perspective. Because getting angry about, say, the servers, or getting angry about a spammer sneaking through our verification process and wrecking our delivery, getting frustrated and treating it like a big failure is not productive. It's not actually helpful to running the business. It's not helpful to getting over that failure. So dealing with these larger failures, it's really by staying calm, you get to you get to have a better perspective, which does bring me to actually a more direct answer. Early on, we were a little bit naive about blacklists, and we ended up on a blacklist. And instead of working with that blacklist to say, hey, help us learn how to make sure that you will always love our emails, and make sure, like, how can we work with you to get great delivery? What are your requirements? Instead, we fought them. And that was dumb. That was really dumb on my part. I let emotions get the best of me, and I wanted them to be wrong. Instead of saying, it doesn't matter, you know what, we were wrong. I don't think it was justified, but that doesn't matter. They have defensible reasons for having put us on that blacklist. And eventually, after a couple of weeks of really snarky email battles, we said, sorry, you're right. Help us learn from you. And long term, that was one of the best decisions we made, is because we built a great relationship with them thereafter. Plus, we maintained impeccable delivery. And now Mad Mimi has over 98% inbox delivery, because we started just accepting when other people tell us we're wrong. Accept it. Don't be angry. Don't try and win emotionally or let go win, because then you end up with a failure. Rather react always with appreciation and kindness, and then you'll end up with more positivity. Both financial positivity and emotional positivity.
I totally loved that advice. I think it's very much just perfectly. I don't want to say on the money, but on the, you know, that would be
right.
too cynical. But essentially on the money as well.
Sure.
The last question two last questions to finish it with. I have another one, but this one, just to continue what you were saying, are there any other great quality? Oh, actually, if you could say that, what do you think are the worst qualities entrepreneurs could have, and the best? Just 1, 2, 3, whatever. The worst qualities for you kind of mentioned a couple, but it would be great to hear from you.
I think the worst quality an entrepreneur can have is to raise money for the sake of it, not because they need it, because then you stop working. I've seen it before as an angel investor, I'm sure you've seen it, is suddenly they raise money and they feel like that's it, they've done, they've hit a success point. And that's not true. So I think it's important to recognize, as an entrepreneur, raising money is not the indicator of success. Customer happiness and profits are the indicators of success. So when you raise money, you've just tripled the pressure on you to be awesome and succeed. And that means add another 5 hours of work to your day. And, you know, another issue that I've often seen from entrepreneurs is forgetting that your ego doesn't matter. Your customers are what matters. Your consumers are what matters. It's not about you, ever. It's never about you. It's always about what you can provide and what value you can provide to other people. In terms of the best things an entrepreneur can exhibit is ask for help, for sure. One of my favorite stories to actually relate from our early days is, again, going back to spam. We caught a spammer in our first year, like a big spammer. We didn't know how to cope. Like, I never kicked a customer off our system at that point. So I picked up the phone and I called customer support of a competitor of ours. And I said, hi, I'm Dean. I'm from Mad Mimi. We're a sort of competitor. They were like an enterprise solution. And I said, what do you guys do with spammers? And they told me, we kick them. Here's how we say it. Here's what we do. And, you know, it was one of the best things they did. I called them a couple times to ask other questions from how to deal with tricky customers. And they were always super sweet and helpful. And we got the chance. Their servers went down one day, and we sent a lot of their mail through our servers as a thank you. And so we created a partnership. But asking for help is amazing. Again, it comes back to ego. Don't let your ego screw things up. Be open to asking for help. And I don't mean asking for help from advisors only, or mentors, or big VC guys, or you know, the sort of superstars of the VC world or the entrepreneur world. Ask help from anyone. Just ask. You don't have to take their advice, but asking the advice will help you figure out what the right answer for you is. you don't have to be right all the time. You don't have to know everything. Just be humble and be aware that you're going to get good advice from the person who walks your dog, the person who serves you coffee, as well as from the guy who's raised money. Just don't ask the person who serves you coffee for advice about funding. Ask the VC guy about that. But ask. And don't underestimate how likely and how happy people often are to give you good answers and helpful advice.
Fantastic suggestions. Thank you. The last question is, Dean, I see some lovely books behind you. Can you tell us, well, not necessarily about those books, but for an entrepreneur, what do you think would be your, no matter 1, 2, 3, doesn't matter how many books that you would highly recommend for everybody?
For sure. I read every single day books that I feel will help me, and I certainly do have I have some answers for you there. I think the first step is to read books, but I would recommend entrepreneurs read more technical books. So, for example, Peter Thiel's 0 to 1 is a great book, but I don't think that's going to get you where you're going, because I honestly feel that's more self-help. Read Steve Blank's book, the 4 Steps to the Epiphany. That one gives you a technical, or not necessarily technical, a detailed roadmap to doing the right things for a business. So certainly 4 Steps to the Epiphany is an amazing, amazing book. Lean Analytics is a really good one that I regularly reference. And then I think there's a book by David Meerman Scott called The New Rules to Marketing and PR. That one rocks. That's a really good book for perspective. It's not hyper technical, but it's really great. And I love books about analytics. And one of my favorite books as well is How to Measure Anything. It's like a good mix between technical, math, but it inspires you to think analytically about business solutions that you might not always keep in mind.
Awesome suggestions, and to everybody listening, we're going to have links to all the books that Dean mentioned in the podcast. But I wanted to thank Dean Levitt, who is not only a very successful entrepreneur, but a very fun person to interview. And Dean, thank you so much. I very much enjoyed talking to you. Hopefully we'll see you someday, either in Tel Aviv or somewhere in the US or elsewhere. Thank you.
For sure. Thank you for an amazing chat, and the questions were awesome. Some of my favorite questions ever. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.